Hey, what's going on guys? Chad here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Pulsar X2. This is their latest offering. It's super hyped up, super anticipated, and right off the bat, this mouse is coming in at $95. Now, if you remember the X-Lite V2 review, that mouse was $80, and it had a lot of bang for the buck going on, which made it a really high value product. This one is $95, and there's a couple things that I don't think quite meet the standards that the X-Lite V2 did. We're going to talk about those, and we're going to talk a little bit about the X-Lite V2, and then also this new fella right over here, which is pretty impressive. And yeah, so let's get into it. Right now the X2 is available in black and white, and there's two sizes. There's small and medium. Inside the box you're going to get the mouse itself, of course, along with a very nice USB Type-C cable and a dongle to connect everything, and then they give you a little bit of paperwork that you're probably not going to read. This mouse runs on 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. There's no Bluetooth mode here, and it has up to 70 hours of battery life, which isn't the greatest, but you've got to remember this is a very lightweight, high-end performance mouse, so that's pretty good considering. There's no RGB on this mouse, but when you turn the mouse on, there's a little light next to the side buttons that kicks on, and it lets you know what DPI you're running at. The weight here is 56 grams, and the build quality is excellent. I have no creaking, no flexing, no rattling, none of that stuff going on. It has a very solid feel, and it has a very well-balanced 56 grams. Not quite as good as the recent mouse that I just reviewed over here, but it's still very good. As you can see, there's no holes where your hands touch, and the surface here is a smooth uncoated plastic, which can be a little bit slippery at times for me, but overall it's pretty good. It's not quite as premium as something like the Superlight, but it's more than adequate. The shape here is symmetrical, but it's not a true ambidextrous mouse as there are only buttons on the left side, and this is a very unique shape. It kind of gives me Viper Mini vibes a little bit, but also the MZ1 Zeiss Rail kind of reminds me of that because it's got pretty aggressive finger grooves on buttons 1 and 2. The sides are relatively flat, and then towards the rear of the mouse they flare out just a little bit, which helps you get a better grip if you're claw gripping. And I think that's who this mouse is targeted at, is claw grippers. It can definitely work for hybrid claw and a little bit of fingertip action too. It's not quite as good for fingertip though, in my opinion, because the hump can kind of get in the way when you're bringing the mouse down into your palm. It kind of rubs the top of your palm, forcing you into a claw grip. It can work though, and if you're someone like me who uses a little bit of a hybrid fingertip, then I would point you towards the Mini of this mouse because I think that's going to be more suited for that grip. As you can see on the bottom of the mouse, you've got two big PTFE feet here. These have a very nice glide, and they're very smooth and high quality, very well rounded. Just great feet overall. And then you've also got the DPI button here, and then your power on and off switch. It has a cutout design just like the X-Lite V2 did. And not that it really matters because nobody's gonna see it. The PCB is painted the same color as your mouse, which keeps things looking very nice and clean. Pulsar decided to go with the beast of a sensor here. It's a 3395, completely top of the line. Goes up to 26,000 DPI to 650 IPS, 50 Gs of acceleration, and it runs at a 1000 Hertz polling rate. I've had zero issues with the performance of the 3395 in-game and out of game. It's been totally flawless. However, some people have reported having a little bit of jittering in Windows when you're barely moving the mouse, and Pulsar just released a firmware update to address this. And what this does is it lets you turn off the Pulsar Motion Sync technology, and upgrading the firmware and disabling it can remove that. And if you buy this mouse in September or later, this mouse is already going to come with the firmware updated. So like I said earlier, the battery life here is 70 hours, but the USB cable that comes with this thing is absolutely a dream to use. Their cables are so good, it's kind of crazy. And I talked about this in the X-Lite V2 review, how fantastic that cable was. I could use it with no bungee, and it wouldn't bother me at all. Like, I could even just leave it on and play with it just laying on the desk. It literally would not bother me at all. Of course, you're going to want to unplug the cable and use it wirelessly, but if you do need to play with the cable plugged in, it's not going to bother you. So let's talk about the buttons, because it's kind of a mixed bag here. The mouse is using KL 8.0 switches, but they do have a pretty decent amount of pre and post travel, making the clicks feel a little less premium than something like the X-Lite V2, and definitely quite a big step down from something like the Lamzo Atlantis, which is using Huano pink dots. So sometimes when I'm in game with the X2, I can kind of feel the button rotating left to right, and it's not button wobble at the top of the mouse, but it's more like in the middle of the mouse and then towards the rear of the button. I can kind of feel it shifting left to right. And that's really pretty distracting, especially with the grip that I use. And it's kind of a step down from the X-Lite V2 in terms of feel and quality. The buttons on the X2 were very light and crispy and poppy, very high quality feeling. And the buttons on the X2 are kind of mediocre feeling, and I expected them to be quite a bit better. Luckily, buttons 1 and 2 are the only negative thing I have to say about this mouse, and hopefully that's something that can be fixed in future copies. So I'll keep an eye out for that. Everything else is fantastic. Like the side buttons are very tactile, poppy, and responsive. They feel great to use. They have great placement, and they pretty much look like the super light buttons, but scaled down just ever so slightly, but they feel way better than the super light buttons. The scroll wheel here is using a TTC gold encoder, and in my opinion, this is the perfect scroll wheel. Has excellent tensioning, not too loose, not too tight. It's very easy to spam in games like Apex, so if you want to annoy your teammates, you can do that to your heart's desire. I think it's the perfect size, the perfect tensioning, and they did a great job. So yeah, let's go ahead and have a listen to all the buttons real quick. Overall, I think the main attraction to the X2 is the shape, size, and price, and all of those things are very good on this mouse. 95 bucks is a little bit more expensive than the 80 from the X-Lite V2, but this mouse doesn't have any holes. It's 56 grams, it's got decent battery life, a great cable, and it's a great performing mouse overall. Now, I think this mouse is great for claw grip for like smaller to medium sized hands, and if you have bigger hands, like maybe medium to large size hands, and you want to use a true claw grip, then I would point you over to the Lamzu Atlantis. It is truly an amazing mouse, and it is my #1 go-to recommendation for claw grip right now for bigger hands. They will have a mini version of this coming out later, but I just had to throw that in there. So if you guys want to see a review on the Lamzu Atlantis, which I highly recommend before making a purchase here, I'll go ahead and have that pop up right here on the left side of the screen. And if you guys have any questions about either of these mice, feel free to drop me a comment and I'll try to get to it when I can. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.